This month, we are exploring pop culture, and today we are talking all things movies and film. From the bisexual tropes that still haunt Hollywood to the good, the bad, and the questionably bi-coded characters we grew up with, we are breaking down how cinema has shaped the way we see ourselves.
We are asking, why do we care so much about celebrity culture? Why is bisexual representation still a mess in so many ways? And most importantly, what actually makes a good bi character?
We will also look at the GLAAD Media Report and the ongoing underrepresentation of bisexuality on screen. Plus, we will talk about how bi tropes have personally affected us, like the way some representations reinforce toxic ideas about masculinity for me.
And for me, it's about the imperfection of bisexuality in film. I don't just want the perfect, unproblematic representation. I want messy human stories too. And we can't talk about all this without revisiting the Hays Code, the old Hollywood censorship rules that basically force bisexuality into subtext, villainy, or just outright invisibility.
Oh, that's me being villainous. We've also got some news and updates as usual, like Netflix's upcoming bisexual romance drama and some fantastic news out of Thailand.
So, whether you are a film buff or just a casual viewer, stick around because this one is going to be good. This is Give It To Me Bi, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything from a bi plus perspective. Now, let us give it to you bi.
Give It To Me Bi acknowledges that we live and work on Gadigal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded.
Hey, babe, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good.
That's good. Ooh, though. Oh my gosh, though. That sounds ominous.
Oh no. Well, other than being a villainous bisexual, as we
villainy.
said in the intro, villainy. I'm also a little bit of a sick bisexual this week. So
a little bit of a sick one.
I got a bit of a sniffle, but like everyone around me is sick at the moment, so it's fine. It's the last week of January. We've got Mardi Gras coming up in Sydney in 2 weeks' time, for 2 weeks. So I'm just resting, digesting, because it is going to be an epic month ahead.
We love a pride season. I mean, look, the benefit of being an antisocial homebody is I don't get sick. And for some reason, Heidi, my partner, and I hit the jackpot last year. We moved my son's daycare and the previous daycare was sick every 7 to 10 days, but since moving has been sick once in like a year, which is just wild. And I'm touching wood, and I know all parents of young children hate me for saying that, but yeah, I don't get sick often because the kid isn't sick that often, which is awesome. And yeah, Mardi Gras, really, really pumped for this one. I might be involved in a few different things. I know you're involved in a few different things. What are you doing for Mardi Gras?
Yeah, so for our listeners overseas, we've got its official title, I know everyone, is the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. But that is our pride, basically. And it's one of the world's longest running pride events, if not the longest running pride event. Certainly one of the world's largest. The parade alone attracts 250,000 people to view it. There are about 30,000 people marching in the parade, but it goes for 2 weeks and it's a full cultural calendar. It is enormous. And we had World Pride here a couple of years ago as part of Mardi Gras. And so, yeah, we just do this every year on repeat, go wild, go fully queer, neck deep. Yeah, it's so much fun.
Have a funny Mardi Gras story about the distinction between Australian Mardi Gras and elsewhere. So I used to play in a band, and my singer in my band is kind of notoriously a bit awkward on the microphone in between songs, and padding for time. Let's say it wasn't their forte. Wonderful performer and wonderful singer, but the banter wasn't something they were extremely comfortable with. On one trip to America, they were playing kind of like an industry party, and it was for Mardi Gras.
But the Louisiana Mardi Gras.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, not the one that we know, but he didn't know that. So he's playing like an acoustic set in the backyard, and in between is trying to banter and keep the crowd engaged, and says, "Oh, hey guys, happy Mardi Gras. How good is it? We love the gays." Everyone just was like, what did you just say? What the heck? I was so confused, and I've never let him live it down. It's one of my favorite stories. Just this awkward Australian guy coming over to this party where everyone is just kind of very cool. It's that kind of party the really cool kids go to. Just standing in the corner going, "We love the gays." It just makes me giggle.
We do. That's funny. Yeah, cultural context is very important. So I don't know where they got the name Mardi Gras from. I'd really love to know, actually. But yeah, started in 1978 as a protest, and now it's just become this huge. It's one of the largest public events to happen in Australia.
Yeah, and it's an absolute time. I was very fortunate. I have a friend who was on the board of Mardi Gras for quite a while and got me some VIP tickets a few years ago. My very first one was 2020. I've always wanted to go, but always I'm not a planner sometimes with like events. And so I got the VIP treatment just before the world shut down for COVID and stood next to JVN from Queer Eye and Dua Lipa.
Hey.
I didn't know who Dua Lipa was. Like, I knew the music, but I didn't know who it was. And just there was this rush, just this tidal wave of shirtless men pushing me around. I was like, what is happening? And taking a photo of this woman. I was like, I feel sorry for them. But it was Dua Lipa standing next to me. It was really great.
That's what you can expect about Mardi Gras. Dua Lipa's just there.
yeah. It's a good party. You're involved this year. You're marching.
I am. Oh, yeah. So this is my little bylight, and I'm quite excited for it. So normally when I march in the parade, I'll do one of the charities I'm involved with, and it's always I don't know. It's always a bit twee. It's, you walk a lot. You'll be in an outfit, like every float has a theme, and it's very unifying, and you're all in uniforms, or not in uniforms, in costumes. It's really, really fun. But this year I'm like, no, I want to go all out. Like I want to do a float for myself.
Great.
I want to look hot as shit, and I want the full experience. I want the lame choreography.
Oh, yes. They're simple enough that 50 people could do it, but interesting enough that you're not just walking down the street. It's a delicate balance.
And it's so cute because, like, there's 50 of you on the float and you just become automatic best friends. And then for like the months afterwards, if you're in a bar and one of the songs on your set comes on, like, you'll notice about 10 people in the bar start doing the choreography, and it's such a unifying experience. And so this year I'm marching with my gym, City Gym. And I'm, they're such an incredible inclusive gym, and they've actually marched in the parade for decades. One of the original floats, and something I'm really excited to be doing with them is, they're being an inclusive gym. They sort of use language, and we see this in a lot of like different organizations. A statement like "gay or straight, you're welcome here," and I'm like, that's awesome. And I've as a bi man, I feel so welcome in my gym, and people really make an effort to use, say, gender neutral language around me when talking about, partners or whatever. And no one's ever assumed my sexuality in there, or they've always been really welcoming of my sexuality. It's been like awesome, and a very different treatment to what I've had in what would be called a gay gym, in a gay dominated gym, which there are plenty of around my area. And so, I'm really keen for them to get some bi language in there, and, gay, straight, or bi, you're welcome here.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because it is already their ideology. It's already their attitude, in that they are welcoming of everyone. I'm like, let's put it in paper. Let's put it right up there in big lights. And so really excited to be representing the bis on that float.
I love that. And it kind of speaks to a lot of these different orgs that say, oh, well, we are all inclusive, and also why do we need to change the language? And I think it's kind of, there's a few parts about it. One, it's a tool, right? You become a beacon of explicit acceptance, not just the presumed acceptance. Like when there's Sydney gay dads, can I go along? Can I go along as a queer parent? And you email and they say, oh, of course, come along. It's like, oh, cool. But I had to email to go through the hoops to see if I was okay to go along. I don't want to take up space that isn't my space to take up. But and so it's nice that they do it already. And the explicit nature of the language coming into play would be really cool. And I imagine I mean, I've always thought, isn't it like business savvy to be really inclusive? Like you would think so.
Totally.
It's like,
Well, when you look at the numbers, it's like you want to at least mention the biggest queer cohort.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting there. We're getting there. And that we're talking about that as well, Chad, I think, is like a media representation. It's sort of this representation in our organizations and businesses, but also in media. We're moving towards a place where that using that inclusive language should be extended beyond the binary of gay or straight and include us, the multigender attracted cohort.
Totally. And it kind of plays into some of the tropes that we'll talk about later about like not saying the word bisexual, kind of showing it but not saying it, and how that plays into characterizations of characters in film. Speaking of bylight, so
yes, give me yours.
I had a babysitter. My mum came to Sydney and looked after our little one. Getting a babysitter for us is a rare occurrence. We live away from our families, and it is expensive to get a babysitter. So we very rarely get to go out by ourselves. And you're probably thinking, how is this a bylight? One, I'm bisexual, so that's why. But also, we went to our favorite ramen joint.
And also, this is our bloody podcast. We can use whatever bylight we want.
Went to our favorite ramen joint, and then went to our favorite little cinema, which is the Ritz Cinema in Randwick. It's a cute little Art Deco theater. That is, one, very cozy and homey, and also very cheap. Like, you're not going to see a movie as cheap as this anywhere in Sydney. I refuse to spend $50 on a ticket at Hoyt's. That's ridiculous. And for years, they had a broken parking lot machine, so you could always get out for free. Like, if you use the validate ticket, you could use the validate parking ticket option. Because I've been to the movies, it would break the machine and then they just let you out. And I did that for years. It was fantastic. Anyway, Heidi and I went and saw a movie called We Live in Time, which is a fantastic new kind of romance drama with Florence Pugh, who we stan. Florence Pugh.
Love Florence Pugh.
Andrew Garfield, also stan Andrew Garfield. For my musical theatre fans, that's Tick, Tick, Boom actor we love. And there was this moment in that movie of bisexual representation that felt so wonderful. They had just kind of hooked up together. They've just met. And sorry, spoilers for anyone. It's not big spoilers, but it's a moment. And,
it's a spoiler.
Yeah. And he's woken up early and is kind of looking around her apartment and sees a bunch of kind of moving boxes with photos of Florence and her ex, or Florence and a woman, very cozy in these photos. And Florence wakes up and says, "Oh, that's my ex." And there was no kind of like moment of uncomfort or fetishizations or anything. It was very normal. That's my ex. We were together for a long time, talked about how long they'd been together. That's also rare. And then also said, and we were starting to make plans to have a family together. And then down the road, it didn't work. And so, wow, all these three moments. One, the recognition of very so what about it, which I loved. Two, like a long, healthy relationship and family planning between two women, which is just wonderful. And it was just very normal. It was very kind of insignificant, inconsequential, and cute. And I loved it.
That's
and
beautiful.
I was like, I was in the cinema just going, yes!
I love it. It's completely normal. And then you get the pom-poms out. Yeah!
I definitely had some pom-poms and I was going nuts in the cinema. But yeah, it was a really like unexpected, beautiful moment in a very also beautiful film. I was very emotional. It's a very emotional film. Yeah. And so if you want to see a beautiful film with some very, very quick but very nice representation, then We Live in Time is that film for you.
But sometimes like that sort of representation is the best when it's just a moment, a completely normal moment and a completely normal relationship and a completely normal interaction. No song and dance. It's just what it is. The genders of our partners, prior or present or future, are not a factor for, certainly for me. I don't look at people's gender, or it's not the highlight. It's not what I'm looking for. It's incredible people who are monosexual, who are straight or gay, who, for them, they think that gender is like this big thing. And for us, we're like, no, this is how we treat it. That's just my ex.
Yeah. As someone who wants to write stories and it is on my bucket list to write a musical, I really want to write about bi stories. And I'm always kind of wrestling with this idea of how central to the plot is the bisexuality. I think we do need a lot more stories that are explicitly bisexual, and that is the point. And kind of wrestling with that. And then how do you show it? How do you show bisexuality in a story without them walking around declaring it all the time? Do you show multiple partners? Do you show and then how does that play into the narrative? And so it's just nice to go, oh, it can just be context, and it doesn't have to be the point. Like you were saying, like people always say, like, why do you make it your whole life and your whole identity? Well, she doesn't. And also her relationship with this man is also her bisexuality as well. So it's really cool to see that. I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Actually, Chad, I think I just caught myself out then being a hypocrite because I always find myself being caught between two spaces where I want it to be completely normal and completely a non-issue. But then also, as we all know, visibility is so important to me. And I will often find myself and catch myself sometimes using gender neutral language, or sometimes I'll make a big point of using gendered language, especially as someone who, is queer coded, or who, if someone doesn't know me, they might not be able to interpret my sexuality. And if I want to make a point of my sexuality, then I do have to make a point of using really pointed language and make a song and a dance about it. So I would really love to get to a point in the world where that's not a necessity. But for me, I think it is still important. Ooh,
it's interesting. I think that is the line we walk in this conversation in pop culture and film and representation is what is successful, what is a good example of representation, and something we'll talk about a bit later is, I think it is the full breadth of representation that is good. Any single film is not going to solve our underrepresentation crisis or anything like that.
Which is why we just need more films.
Yeah, we just need a lot, and we need the whole range of it. But we've also there's some fun news updates. I guess speaking also about media, if you are a fan of the recent smash hit The Bear, as I am, I thought it was wonderful. My workplace, we are all obsessed with The Bear. Jeremy Allen White, who plays Carmy, very handsome man, is about to produce and star in a new Netflix series being touted as the bisexual romance drama. It is based on a book by the same author who wrote Call Me By Your Name. So Call Me By Your Name, a very beautiful story, and some bisexual representation in there as well. That's really cool. Probably one of the hottest names in Hollywood, especially in TV right now, is Jeremy Allen White. So for them to be attached to this, but not just attached, but actively producing, is really cool to see them kind of putting their name and their resources behind a story like that. I don't know what the story is about, to be fair, but I guess we'll see.
That's so exciting. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I feel like people are going to be talking about this a bit.
I find the Netflix thing tricky because Netflix have been in hot water the last few years. One, they have a huge queer department and produce a lot of queer film and TV shows, yet they have also doubled down on platforming some really problematic, the transphobic views and comedians and other content. And then when they've kind of been called out for it or whatever, they've doubled down and got that person back on and paid them more money and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I don't know how to approach Netflix. I think it's hard to expect businesses to represent and reflect our values and just realize at the end of the day, they want to make money. They're going to make all content for all people because there's an audience that will eat it up. And just kind of, I guess, be okay with how uncomfy that feels.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of that in a lot of domains, even well beyond pop culture, in that we're going to see a lot of the brands and whatever that we trust, have trusted, are going to start looking a lot less trustworthy.
Backflipping. We've seen a bit of that since the inauguration. A lot of these companies that roll out Pride Month merch and change their logo to the rainbow have started stripping all their DEI stuff and firing staff, and it's like, okay.
Or doing it all, platforming transphobes, homophobes, biphobes, whilst also platforming the queer community.
Yeah.
How comfortable we are with that, we'll see how this will.
I guess they're not our friends at the end of the day, right? They're not
businesses at the end of the day.
They're businesses. They're there to make money, to make more money, and make more money, and to expect
we're finally realizing that.
Is probably a lost cause. But then it's just like, how do you want to participate? Do you want to consume it? Do you want to give them your money? It's a bit tricky.
Yeah, but also because these are businesses, and the GLAAD report actually notes this, money talks.
Money does talk.
Money talks. Money is influence in these spaces. And you can definitely take a stand where you decide where you put your money. But what happens from those decisions? We'll see.
Totally.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess on the back of last week's episode, talking about like your power, we talked about kind of collective and local power, and money is a huge way to have influence. And I mean, these people that own these companies are billionaires, so they have more influence on the immediate scale, but completely taking away someone's opportunity to make more money is a great way to wield your collective individual power. And so there are plenty of like boycotts and like lists and stuff that people are putting together recently about like, if you believe this thing, or if these are your values, maybe consider shopping here and not here. And it's if that is a way that feels true to you to exercise your power, then maybe go explore that and Google some of those lists.
Yeah. I find another really effective thing to do as well is to follow the queer creators. And so that sort of takes away some of my own decision making, because it is an icky sort of moral quandary that you find yourself in. If I am unsubscribing from a platform that is paying queer creators, that's hurting queer creators. But if those queer creators decide to move their content somewhere else, I'd follow that.
Yeah. I mean, big money is always dirty money. There's no such thing as like big clean money. Something happened on the way there to make it a bit icky. And really, there's no one funding queer cinema, queer anything that isn't in some way not perfect. And so there's always this question that we have to ask ourselves of like, what level of turning a blind eye am I happy with? And that's true in everything we consume ever. We live in this capitalist world, and that's tricky. But I mean, I'm kind of here for some good news. Steve, you've got some good news as well.
Yeah, speaking of money, so I just really wanted to reflect on some good news out of Thailand. So Thailand recently legalized same-sex marriage, which is just fantastic. And they have a huge, vibrant, incredible queer community over there. And there are a lot of strong cultural links between Australia and Thailand. And just in the last couple of days, Thailand's public health ministry has allocated to approximately 200,000 trans people hormone replacement therapy as part of their national health scheme.
That's awesome.
Just incredible.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Incredible.
There's something like 7 million Australian dollars is being dedicated to help with HRT, which is super, super cool. And like I feel like I'm ranty on every point, but I feel like we could do that forever, and it's not the point of the episode. But it's just really nice to see good news out of corners of the world that are so typically kind of cast aside as imperfect, you know what I mean? And like we see a lot of like kind of posturing about the right way to do things, and this is some of the best news we've seen for a long time for our trans siblings. And so snaps for Thailand.
Woo!
I guess to kick off the conversation about pop culture, celebrity culture, film, is a little bit of a discussion about why do we care? Like, what? Why are we looking at these people and this content, this art form, and expecting it to be a certain way, or appreciating when it is a certain way? How does that play a part in our lives, and what do we expect from this kind of medium? And I feel like it's layered, right? Like, there are so many ties between our kind of zeitgeist and like the culture of the time and the content and the media that we consume. They're so intrinsically linked, whether subtly or overtly. We see it obviously overtly in things like the news, which sometimes the news plays into celebrity culture, so that can be important. But then the stories we tell also tells stories of like who we are and how we can be and who we could aspire to be as well. And when you get these diverse and inclusive stories, it begins to normalize the differences between us. Like, we are all together human, and that should be enough to endear us to one another. That like, oh, you're human, I'm human, I love you, purely based on that. And unfortunately, sometimes that's not enough. And so sometimes what we need is really kind of explicit examples of like, oh, that is that type of person, and I like that representation of that in that show or in that movie. Oh, okay, maybe I'm wrong about my opinions about that thing, or I've learned a bit more, or my heart has softened. And so that can start to challenge some perceptions that people might have, and humanize those experiences and those types of people, and open up the opportunity to connect with one another and kind of come back to the human side of things. People are always kind of saying, can't we just be human? Why do we have to label everything? I was like, yeah, we always say like, in a utopian world, hell yeah, screw the labels. But it's almost like we have to
as I like to say, they're not labels, they're descriptions, people. Get over it.
Yeah, so we almost have to like go through it to get to that point. So it's like, yes, we agree, let's just be human. But until you see me as an equal human, let's explore how wonderful all our differences can be, and give it some language. So there's like, when you see celebrities coming out, when you see characters in film represented well, and we'll talk about what a good representation is, it makes you a little bit more receptive to the idea that like, oh, I can coexist with these people, and I can have empathy with these people. And for ourselves, oh, wow, I'm not broken. Wow, there's other people like me. I'm valid. I can be accepted, and I can live a whole interesting, sometimes challenging life.
Yeah. I think it's like, it really boils down to us as individuals. We really have quite small circles. We have the people we interact with, our friendship groups, which might be a couple of dozen people, our workplace, a couple of dozen people, our families. And so really, we don't have the capacity to be exposed to many diverse people, diverse experiences. And so one of the greatest gifts that pop culture, celebrity culture, all of this has given the world is our exposure to more humans, and to be able to see just what humanity looks like on such a grand scale, because I can't go around shaking everyone's hand and learning everyone's story. And so we're given these windows, these little tidbits. But then the issue becomes that these tidbits, these windows into different experiences, are gatekept. They are developed by writers, they're developed by people, and people are influenced by their own biases, their own flaws, all these sorts of things. And then that's where we look at how we get poor representation of people, which there are just 100 million examples of poor representations of people, their religion, their race, their sexuality, their gender. We just see all sorts of problems. But I think the very attempt at it from the get-go then has brought on, as we go further into hopefully what will become our Star Trek future. Yes, everyone, another Star Trek future reference.
I think I cut it out of the last episode. Like, we've had it in 4, so I was like, all right, this is enough.
But as we approach it, then we get better and better at it. We get better and better at it, and we have people telling their own stories as well. And then when it comes to, celebrities and, real people who are, at the end of the day, they're just working in pop culture. They have a platform, they have exposure. And, I celebrate that they are able to platform their own experiences.
How interesting is it that, like, at the end of the day, it is just someone's workplace, right? Like, what if, like, we chose as a people to go, let's really look up to
lawyers. Let's make lawyers celebrities.
Celebrity lawyers. And I know that there is a couple of them. But like, what if that was our insight into not insight. What if that was our fascination as a people?
And we lived in a world where courtrooms were our pop culture, and the celebrities were lawyers, and everyone talked about this court case and this. How weird would that be?
And like, we'd go to the courtrooms on a weekend. Hey, do you want to go see this case? Like, that would be bizarre.
Giant stadiums for court cases.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I know why story is exalted to the level that it is. Like, story is what makes us human. Story is what connects us. Story is how we have survived. And so, like, we thrive on good storytelling. And so we if people are particularly good at it, that's why we kind of lift them up. But how weird would it be if, like, road workers are the people. Oh my gosh, they're at the front right now. Let's go out and get an autograph. Like, that's so funny to me that it's,
and they're paid millions and millions of dollars to do that task.
Bonkers money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Slight tangent, because celebrities, we view them as celebrities, and so I feel like we sort of discard them a bit. But I actually love hearing from big name actors talking about their craft. Like, I was recently watching something, I think it was with Angelina Jolie, and she, by absolute bloody bicon, my God, Angelina. And sorry to that.
I think you're drooling a little bit.